think the bottom line for this documentary is that it was not only incredibly well streamed, the content itself for a lot of people came across as powerful because they were telling their side of the story and responding to a lot of the information that had come out from the royal family against them, about them. And it was the first time, for instance, them also responding to the
they
reception.
Weren't questioned forensically by anybody, were
but they were responding to also the reactions from the Oprah interview. And when you say nobody was forensically interviewing them...
It wasn't an investigative documentary.
Well, thank you. It was not meant to be an investigative documentary. And the royal family has never been forensically interviewed about things that they have released about Harry and Meghan. So I think it should work both ways. And I don't think this was meant to be investigative. It was meant to be them telling...
An observation of their story.
They also had experts on there to talk about the impact of the environment in terms of Brexit, and the culture in terms of racism, and all of that spoke strongly.
I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the documentary, and I think putting their situation in context and bringing up all these other issues was incredibly compelling. And actually, I think just Netflix has it absolutely made.
But if it had been a panorama...
It's the music as well that gets me. I'm in there with the music.
If it had been a panorama...
I'm not going to blame Harry and Meghan for the impact and choices made by people in the royal family, people in the media. No, let me finish. I'm not going to blame them for that because this country was already in a cesspit of racism and race relations issue before they showed up.
So you're saying that we too are part of this cesspit then?
We all are.
Well, I take issue with that because you don't know me and you're making an assumption
about me. But it's not about the individual, it's about a general...
Exactly. I'm talking about collective responsibility and I'm also talking about individual responsibility. What do we as individuals do when we vote in people who are not interested in protecting others, who are interested in pushing against the marginalized?
It's all generalisation.
It's not generalisation because it all rolls on. It has a roll-on impact.
It all begins with a sentence that cut through the noise of yet another TV debate. This country was already in a cesspit of racism before Harry and Meghan came along. Those were the unapologetic, fearless words of Dr. Shola Moshogbamimu, spoken on Jeremy Vine's program. Words that didn't just echo in that studio but reverberated far beyond, shaking a national conversation that too often gets sanitized or, just swept under the rug. You see, what Dr. Shola was saying wasn't controversial to those who live with the reality of racism in Britain. It was controversial to those who are determined to deny it. And that's where the problem lies. Because when someone as bold as Dr. Shola speaks truth to power, she forces the nation to confront something it desperately wants to pretend doesn't exist. Let's be crystal clear. Racism in Britain did not begin with Meghan Markle marrying into the royal family. Racism has always been there, entrenched in its institutions, whispered in its corridors, printed across its tabloids, and baked into its political culture. What Meghan's presence did, however, was shine a spotlight so bright that it could no longer be ignored. The arrival of a biracial American actress into one of the whitest, most tradition-bound institutions in the world didn't create racism, it exposed it. It peeled back the glossy facade of the monarchy and revealed the ugly reality beneath. And that, my friends, is exactly what made Meghan Sussex such a target. Now, I wasn't just making an abstract point on that show. I was naming something that honestly, so many Black Britons and ethnic minorities know firsthand, that this country has always struggled with race, even though it tries to cloak itself in this idea of being tolerant or post-racial. Anyone familiar with the Windrush scandal, where Black citizens who had lived in Britain for decades were suddenly harassed, detained, or deported, knows that racism is not some relic of the past. It's alive and thriving in the very structures of the state. From the Metropolitan Police being called institutionally racist in the wake of the Stephen Lawrence murder, to the constant scapegoating of immigrants in politics, the cesspit I referred to is not an exaggeration. It is reality. Now let's bring Meghan into this. The moment Harry and Meghan announced their relationship, the British tabloids unleashed a level of venom and dog whistling that was, honestly, impossible to ignore. One headline described her as, and I quote, almost straight outta Compton, reducing her heritage to a caricature and associating her with crime-ridden stereotypes. Others obsessed over her mother's dreadlocks, her blackness, her so-called exotic DNA. Even when Meghan did nothing more than smile, the coverage, well, it just dripped with coded racism. Compare the headlines about Meghan eating avocado toast, supposedly linked to drought and exploitation, to Kate Middleton being praised for the very same snack, as if it were some miracle of wellness. That's not coincidence. That's systemic bias playing out in real time. You know, when I defended Meghan and Harry on platforms like Jeremy Vine, I wasn't merely defending individuals. I was defending truth. I was holding up a mirror to British society and honestly asking it to take a hard look at itself. The backlash Meghan endured was, well, a textbook example of how Britain reacts when the status quo is disrupted, when whiteness and aristocracy are challenged by diversity and modernity. Meghan was never just critiqued for her actions. She was critiqued for daring to exist in a space that was never built for her. She became the vessel into which centuries of suppressed racism were poured, and the British media, honestly, happily played bartender, serving it up daily to an eager audience. And here's the real kicker. The country tried to gaslight not just Meghan but the entire world. Whenever she or Harry spoke about racism, the narrative turned to, oh, they're exaggerating, or Britain isn't racist. We're one of the most tolerant nations. Honestly, it's astonishing how quickly that denial became the dominant story. Yet the evidence piled higher and higher. Meghan spoke of conversations within the royal family about Archie's potential skin color. The press dissected every aspect of her life with a microscope, yet similar scrutiny was absent for her sister-in-law. It's, well, impossible to ignore the double standard at play here. Harry himself said in the Netflix documentary that the media was relentless in their racism and that the palace failed to protect Meghan when it mattered most. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern. And you know, that pattern speaks volumes. You know, the beauty of Dr. Shola's statement on that panel was that she just refused to let people pretend racism arrived with Meghan. Instead, she put responsibility squarely where it belonged, on the shoulders of a nation already steeped in racial injustice. She reminded everyone that Harry and Meghan simply made visible what so many had been shouting about for decades. And when she said Britain was already in a cesspit of racism, she was really challenging the gaslighting, the denial, the folks who say it's not that bad and want to just sweep everything under the carpet. Think about how Britain responded to Meghan's mental health struggles. When Meghan revealed in the Oprah interview that she had been suicidal during her time as a working royal, the empathy she deserved was, honestly, drowned out by skepticism. Instead of support, she was met with sneers from commentators like Piers Morgan, who accused her of lying on live television. This wasn't just misogyny, it was racialized misogyny, the age-old stereotype of the angry black woman or the lying mixed-race woman being dragged into the mainstream. And the fact that such rhetoric was given space on national television only proves Dr. Shola's point further. But let's not forget Harry's role in this. He knew what his wife was up against because he himself admitted he had been blind to the racism until Meghan opened his eyes. That is powerful. Harry was born into privilege, into a system that, honestly, insulated him from the realities of race. Yet when he saw the way Meghan was treated, he simply could not unsee it, and instead of staying silent like his brother William, he chose to speak out. That decision, to side with truth over tradition, cost him his home, his role, and his relationship with his family. But you know, it gave him freedom. Harry and Meghan's decision to step away wasn't betrayal, it was survival. Dr. Shola has always been one of the few voices in mainstream media willing to cut through the lies and say what others are just too afraid to say. She has been shouted down, insulted, even vilified for daring to confront the racial double standards Meghan endured. But she has never wavered. Her words on Jeremy Vine that day, honestly, captured the entire essence of this saga. Britain was already grappling with racism long before Meghan set foot in that palace. Her presence didn't invent the problem, it exposed it. And here lies the irony. Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary was not just a love story or a personal memoir. It was really a historical record of how one of the most powerful institutions in the world failed to protect a woman from racism, and how that failure mirrored the broader societal failures in Britain. By centering Meghan's experiences, it forced millions of viewers worldwide to see what Britain tried so hard to deny. That is why Dr. Shola's words matter so much, because she is saying what the documentary proved. This isn't just about Meghan, it's about a nation unwilling to confront its own truth. As we reflect on this, the question we must ask is, why does Britain get so defensive whenever racism is brought up? Why does a statement like Dr. Shola's cause such outrage? The answer is uncomfortable but clear, because acknowledging racism means acknowledging complicity. It means admitting that institutions like the monarchy, the press, and the government are not as pure or progressive as they claim. It means dismantling